Good morning and maybe good afternoon to some of you who are joining from another time zone. We're hosting here from Southern California, and I know we have many from the East Coast and probably across the country. My name is Debbie Dillon. I am the Chief Strategy Officer for the Southern California Association of Governments, which is the metropolitan planning organization here in Southern California, which covers 6 counties, 191 cities, and approximately we serve 19 million people. I am the chair of the Southern California Government to University Initiative. Also have my co-chair here, which is Sandy Buchanan from RAND. And we welcome you today to the Promising Strategies to Expand Talent and Diversity in the Public Sector Workforce webinar, which is the culmination of probably a little more than a year-long joint research effort between RAND, SCAG, and the Volcker Alliance. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Peter Morrissey from the Volcker Alliance to talk a little bit about the Volcker Alliance and the G2U in general. Peter, go ahead, take it away.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Debbie. I appreciate the opportunity to say a quick word at the start of this important milestone for the SOCALG2U initiative. I'm excited as you are to engage with the findings of this important research, so I'm going to be very brief. Most of you may know, but some of you may not, that the mission of the Volcker Alliance is to empower the public sector workforce to solve the challenges facing our nation. And in support of that initiative, our G2U initiative is working with partners across the country to connect rising leaders from our nation's universities with career opportunities in government service. When our colleagues at RAND and at SCAG suggested that there would be some great value in exploring how we could better diversify the government workforce in Southern California, we were excited and proud to support their research. And we're so grateful to the leadership of Debbie Dillon, Sandy Buchanan, Charles Goldman, T'Pring Picado, and all the other staff and support from SCAG and RAND who've moved this important collaboration forward so successfully. Like all of you, I'm really looking forward to engaging with these insights and reflecting on how we can put them to work strengthening our public institutions. So with no further ado, I'm going to hand it right back over to the project team. Thank you so much, Debbie.
Thank you, Peter, and we really appreciate the Volcker Alliance inviting us to be part of this amazing effort countrywide. You know, we started this in February of 2020, right before the COVID-19 pandemic hit, and we still managed to make a tremendous amount of progress and do a great amount of work, and not the least of which is this effort. And we were just reflecting a little bit before we started here on just how grateful we are for this opportunity to help us make new connections. And I know part of what the G2U prides itself on is creating this network of networks. And so I now have a stronger network because of all of the people on the steering committee and the leadership from RAND. And if it wasn't for Sandy, I wouldn't have met Charles, who worked for this wonderful team. And we just have opened new doors of opportunity with our own organizations. And also this effort in particular is getting traction in a variety of ways that we're really excited about. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Charles Goldman, who is the senior economist from RAND who helped lead this project. Charles.
Thank you, Debbie and Peter. And I want to introduce our team, most of whom are on the line with us today. So I'm Charles Goldman. Also with us are T'Pring Picado, Daniel Allen, Luke Irwin, Ying Zhao, and Sung Ho Ryu. And you will hear from at least myself, T'Pring, and Luke during the presentation today. We're aiming to spend about 25 minutes going over the main findings and recommendations from the study. And I'd like to ask you not to interrupt the presentation during the presentation, but we'll have plenty of time for questions and answers afterward. You are welcome to make brief comments in the chat while we're talking, especially if you want to make a note that you'd like to ask something. You don't need to type out your full comment. I will be happy to call on you as time permits. You can also use the raise hands function, and once we finish the presentation, I'll try to call on as many people as possible to join the discussion, and we will look forward to having a discussion with you. So as Debbie said, I want to echo that we at RAND and SCAG, who work together on this project, have really found it a valuable and rewarding experience. As Debbie mentioned, this project is intended to look at ways to increase talent and diversity in the public sector workforce, we focused on Southern California, but we think a lot of the lessons that we learned may be broadly applicable to other regions in the country. We're grateful to the Volcker Alliance for sponsoring the G2U initiative and for providing funding for this research project. The project was also funded in part by a grant from the Southern California Association of Governments. We looked at three main areas in the project. First, we tried to describe what the public sector workforce looks like in Southern California in terms of demographics, income, and occupations. Then we looked at what facilitators and barriers are in the market that affect recruiting and hiring particularly talented and underrepresented individuals who might or might not go into public sector careers. And then in the final part of the project, we looked at what strategies different stakeholders could use to increase hiring and retention of talented and underrepresented employees. We used three main approaches in the project. First, we analyzed US Census Bureau data from the American Community Survey to understand the public sector workforce from a statistical point of view. Then we looked at previously published reports, papers, and articles that addressed the issues that we're looking at. And finally, we conducted a series of conversations with representatives of the different stakeholder groups. Particularly, we talked to public sector employers, we talked to college and university career services professionals, and we talked to college and university students, both graduate students and undergraduate students, including community colleges and four-year universities. We keep saying that we're looking at the Southern California workforce, so let me define what we mean by that. In the project, we're using the definition that is the same as SCAG's service area, which are these 6 counties that you can see on the slide. So it's Los Angeles County, but it's also 5 other counties in Southern California. And everything we're going to present will be based on this region. When we look at employment in this region, we see a very substantial number of workers working in the public sector. Public sector encompasses federal, state, and local government, as well as enterprises that are owned by those levels of government. What we found from our analysis of the American Community Survey is that there are about 900,000 full-time workers in this Southern California region that work in the public sector. And that represents about 1/8 of the entire full-time workforce in the region. On the pie chart, you can see the division of the workforce into different types of employers. And the largest, not surprisingly, is the private sector. You can see at 71%. On the left-hand side of the pie chart, you can see 3 wedges that we've pulled out slightly from the pie. The federal government represents about 2% of the total workforce in this region. The state government represents about 3%, and local government represents about 7%. In total, about 12% or 1/8 of the workforce. So this is a sizable workforce, and therefore it's important to us to think about the composition of the workforce. We then looked at the comparison of the public sector workforce to the demographics of the population as a whole. And on this chart, in the blue bars, we're displaying the race and ethnicity of the total population of the Southern California region. And in the red bars, we're displaying the race and ethnicity of the public sector workforce. And what you can see at first glance, the bars are relatively similar in height, indicating that in a broad sense, the workers in the Southern California public sector look generally like the race and ethnic distribution of the population as a whole, but there are some differences. The red bar for the white population is a bit taller, and the black population, and the red bar for the Hispanic population is a bit shorter. So representation in the public sector is a bit above the population share in the white and black groups and a bit below in Hispanic. The next thing we did was to look at the distribution of these same workers stratified by their income level. And now we see a different pattern. So what we're looking at on this chart is for each of the race and ethnic groups, we show 3 bars. The blue bar are workers earning less than $25,000 a year. The red bar is a workers earning between $25,000 and $75,000, and the green bar is a workers who earn $75,000 or more. And now when you look across the race and ethnicity categories, you see different patterns starting to emerge. So even though in the overall workforce, there was a reasonably close match between the race and ethnic composition of the public sector workforce and the general population, we see that the Hispanic and Black workers are heavily concentrated in this middle earnings group, whereas the white workers are much more concentrated in the high earnings group. And when we look at the Asian and Pacific Islander group, they're about evenly split between the middle and the high group. Now, those in the green bar are likely to be professional and managerial workers. And these are likely to be workers that have more of a voice and a say in what's going on in the public sector, in federal, state, and local government. And so the fact that we see particularly Black and Hispanic workers more concentrated in the middle earnings group indicates that these groups don't appear to be as well represented at all levels of the public sector. And so that presents us with the question about why might there be issues or factors that could affect the representation of different groups in the public sector. So to explore barriers and facilitators of the public sector, we divided these topics into 4 stages of what we call the career pipeline. So the first stage is talent attraction. The second stage is candidate qualifications. The third stage is the entry and hiring process. And then after workers are hired, we look at career retention and advancement. And on the next several slides, we're going to show you both barriers and facilitators. We've actually color-coded them. You'll see on the slide. So the barriers are in black and the facilitators are in purple. And as I mentioned before, we identified these through our review of reports and studies, as well as our interviews with public sector hiring managers, with career services professionals, and with students who are seeking jobs. Now I'd like to introduce Daniel Allen, who will take us through the barriers and facilitators.
Thank you very much, Charles. I'm going to jump right into the first facilitator / barrier here in talent attraction. Students identified the public sector work as a way to improve their communities. Particularly, students found that local government was an area where they felt they could, help improve their local communities. However, students were rarely aware of the many opportunities which exist in the public sector, which is illustrated on the chart on the next slide. Here, many students felt that they knew about teaching, they knew about police officers, they knew about firefighters, but they weren't aware of the many other opportunities that exist in computer science, physical science, and business opportunities in all levels of public sector work. In addition, many of those we interviewed perceived an inflexible work culture within the public sector, and they had a high emphasis on workforce diversity. Now, their opinions on diversity within the public sector were mixed. Some felt that it is likely quite diverse. Others felt not so much. In addition, transportation can either be a barrier or facilitator to public sector work. Some students felt that they'd only want to work within their city and were thus only interested in local government or other levels of government that were within their city. And others were more interested in commuting long distances to work. Public transportation is also a plus. On to candidate qualifications. The hiring managers have very positive views of Southern California graduates or students still in their programs in terms of their technical skills and their ability and willingness to learn. However, many saw that professional skills were lacking, such as job search skills, including interviewing and resume writing, and workplace essential skills like critical thinking and interpersonal communication. For the entry and hiring process, internships were seen as a very positive facilitator, providing students with concrete work experience and also broadening their awareness of the various opportunities within the public sector. Because once you get that foot in, you hear about a lot more of the opportunities that do exist. However, there are issues related to whether they're advertised enough, these internship opportunities, which may limit the diversity of the pool. In addition, the public sector often has a reliance on unpaid internships, which it may exclude disadvantaged groups who can't afford to work without pay. Government hiring processes are lengthy and complicated, which again, similar to the internship issue, may be a problem for disadvantaged groups due to them not being able to wait 6 to 12 months for a job. Career retention and advancement is the final barrier facilitator. And one of the big positives there is our professional development programs and mentoring opportunities help attract and retain employees. However, there are concerns that people have a tendency to want to mentor people who look like them, so they may not be equitably available to all groups. Middle and senior management is typically promoted from within in the public sector, which limits opportunities to increase diversity through lateral hiring, which is often done in the private sector, which in turn emphasizes the importance of developing talented and underrepresented leaders from within. And with that, I'm going to hand it off back to Charles, who I believe is going to hand it off to Pring.
Thank you, Daniel. And now I'd like to turn it over to Pring Piquato to take us through the promising strategies.
So I will wrap up. So we learned about the demographics in the public sector according to the ACS. Then you learned about some of the barriers and facilitators that we explored, that we documented through our interviews and our literature search. And now I'm going to share some of the findings. What can we do about this? What are the promising strategies that build on the facilitators and address the barriers? So to increase the talent. So the one thing that we found was that when the leadership has a strong commitment to increasing diversity and representation, then that led to more clearly articulating that down to the hiring levels as well, and an emphasis even to the future employees. So securing those clear commitments from the leadership early and expressing and demonstrating those commitments regularly is really important. The next one is, you remember Daniel was speaking to the fact that students and job seekers don't really know the breadth of careers that are out there. So there's an opportunity to communicate the benefits of public sector career, building on the facilitator that people want that purpose-driven career, but also, they need to know what jobs are out there. So emphasizing that. Next slide. And so it follows this one. So the awareness and the sharing of these jobs in general, the breadth of jobs, the types of career opportunities, but also these internship opportunities. So we are moving away from the unpaid internships into the paid internships, and improving the awareness and sharing of these to a variety of job seekers is important. So communicating the wide range of opportunities, adopting multiple methods of interaction. So job seekers said that they are seeking out opportunities from job boards, their organizations, so their universities and colleges and community colleges, job fairs, but also word of mouth. So any multiple methods of interacting is important. And then there's an opportunity to build this internship database, and perhaps it's something that the agencies, the local and state agencies, can work on together. The federal agencies really do have a database already. One thing that we found from the literature was that the job titles may not be as desirable and attractive to a diverse range of individuals, and making those job titles and descriptions clearer is an opportunity to improve in the talent pipeline. And then, as you recall, Daniel said that the hiring process is not only complicated, but it's also long. So helping students navigate, setting expectations could also improve the pipeline. And then small but still important aspect is publicizing the transportation benefits. A lot of the agencies have vouchers that you can have for public transportation, things like that. So communicating the transportation aspects as well is an important. And then thinking about that internship and career entry and retention process. So really promoting the funded internships earlier through agency budgets or external funding, building that paid internship opportunities, that's important. Also, finding ways that the agencies can provide mentoring to all incoming employees, right? And not making it exclusive, making them inclusive, so that people feel like they are learning and they are welcome, particularly in the purpose-driven careers that these often provide. And then, there may be an opportunity to develop external regional mentoring. So it's not just based on the agencies. Agencies could be smaller, local governments could be smaller, but maybe there's an opportunity for networks to join together. And like Debbie spoke in the beginning, is we are a part of a network now, the GTU. So developing that external regional mentoring as well. And the last part is we found that oftentimes there's a great champion, and it's important to make sure that these connections aren't lost just because the champion changes jobs or changes organizations. So really making sure that there's the institutionalized connections, systematic connections between the government agencies and the higher education institutions, making sure, like I said, first, building that leader to leader organization so that there's that great commitment. And then fostering the collaboration, not only between a single agency and a university or college, but also among the local governments to broaden that pipeline of talent and share the perspectives and the best practices. So with that concludes our findings and interpretations of the report. But another thing that we did was create career stories. And so there are 10 career stories, and what you can see is on the bottom, there's a link to those stories. Those stories are live on the SCAG web page right now. And please use the personal career stories and videos from federal, state, and local government. And Charles, were we gonna play?
Yes, I'm gonna play. I need to just do a quick technical switchover. I'm gonna play the quick video. So the first one is about a 40-second quick take that's really good for social media. And then the other 9 are about 5 minutes long each. We'll also put these links in the chat at some point today, so you'll have them.
I'm not sure there is a typical day or week at my job.
I work for the taxpayers to protect the Medicare and Medicaid program.
So our community has so many different voices. It's really important that the city organization reflects those voices.
You should pursue your heart. And if you enjoy bringing about social change in the public policy level, then working in the public sector is the place to be.
So we put together those personal career stories and videos for you to watch and download. They really express sort of the breadth of opportunities in the public sector career fields. And and also we have, if you can download and share the report, and any opportunity to highlight the great and rewarding careers in the public sector is great. So with that, I think we are ready for questions if we want to, and we'll also put in the chat the link to the report, but you may have already received it in your invitation to this. So now we are going to open up for questions. So we have about half an hour left in our presentation.
So please feel free to use the raise hands or mention in chat, or if there's nobody waiting to speak, you're just welcome to come on camera and join in the conversation. All right, I see Joe Angelis, am I saying that right, has a question. Do you want to, Joe, do you want to come on camera and ask your question? Or at least audio?
Oh,
okay. So Joe's question is, what barriers have you found the most challenging with regard to recruiting diverse candidates? T'Pring, you want to give that a try?
sure. Well, while we didn't, create a priority list, one of the aspects that was repeated from the job seekers is not knowing the occupations out there, and two, not having the understanding of the process. So that can be a barrier. And I say it's the most challenging because if you don't know the process of applying for these jobs, then you can't even start. It's not even like you don't have the skills, you don't have the right connections, you don't have the letters of recommendation. It's just like you didn't even know how to go about applying for these jobs. So I would say together with not knowing the careers and then not knowing how to apply for the careers might be the most challenging.
Yeah, and I'd like to add, I'm not sure that I'd say this is the single most important barrier. It may not be, but one of the barriers that we focused a lot on is the use of unpaid internships that Daniel spoke about. And this might sound like, oh, okay, local government doesn't have a lot of money, so people need to, governments need to use these unpaid internships, but it has a really insidious effect on trying to promote a wide range of opportunities in the public sector, because as Daniel said, students from families with higher income are exactly the ones that are able to take unpaid internships and to build up their resume that makes them more competitive and also expands their own awareness of the public sector, whereas students whose families can't afford to support them may be locked out of these. And so we really think it's an important priority to try to raise funds either within government budgets or from external sources. And we were gratified that while we were doing the project, President Biden issued an executive order for the federal government directing federal agencies to limit the use of unpaid internships, to prioritize funding internships, and it is explicitly connected to the administration's goal of opening up opportunities in the federal workforce for diverse individuals to represent the population of the country. I think I saw Diane Vu has her hand up, and Diane is one of our Career Stories stars.
Hi, everyone. I work for HHS OIG. It's a federal agency. And I wanted to share with you that, Charles, you hit it on the nail when you say that, the challenges with getting underrepresented groups to an unpaid internship. As an internship coordinator here in the LA area for my office, I can tell you that the challenges of having a single mom going to Cal State LA, coming to my office to do, 2 days a week, 8 hours internship, and then having to work at, her private job to make money. It was very hard for her, it was literally going to school, working at my office. And so it does incentivize people who have parents who can support their living expenses and their financial, their pay their bills. So I really appreciate the Biden administration for putting up that effort. But there's a lot of obstacles with getting the paid internship. I want to make it clear that to be a paid internship, it has to come on USA Jobs. And that's an announcement that you got to go on and apply. And there's a long application process, a background process to even get the interview for the paid internship versus the unpaid internship, which is a lot easier to obtain. And what I really wanted to mention is our agency signed up for Handshake, which is a program in which the colleges and universities are having students enroll in. And we are on there as an ambassador, and we are targeting underrepresented groups with their majors and giving them the opportunity to come to our career fair, introducing them to the work that we do, because we know that to better serve the community, we got to look like the community that we serve, especially being in law enforcement here in Los Angeles. So that's all I wanted to share, is that we have this Handshake thing and it's working out really well for us. Thank you.
Thanks, Diane. And I encourage you all, of course, to check out the Career Stories videos where you will see Diane featured. And I don't know, we might have a couple of other of our Career Stories stars. Is there anybody else that wanted to ask a question that I didn't notice? I apologize if I have overlooked anyone. I'm not the best expert at all of these Zoom controls. All right, I see. Let's see. I see Camille Weber. Do you want to?
Yeah, I'm trying to get my camera on so you folks can see me. Hi, my name is Camille Weber. I am the Recruitment and Outreach Coordinator for the Environmental Protection Agency Region 9. So although our main office is in San Francisco, we do have satellite offices in LA and then San Diego. So definitely reaching those counties that you guys talked about in the presentation, that is a priority for us. One thing that I wanted to ask a question about was, and I really appreciated that you guys talked about promising strategies, and then also what is kind of like the perspective of students or folks who are looking for entry-level positions and really get started on their careers, what they're looking for, and what are some of the perceptions of federal jobs. And I felt that way too. So what's unfortunate is that system hasn't really changed that much from the time that I applied for my internship that's led to my full-time position to now. And that bothered me so much that I started to create these how to apply to federal jobs. And I've been offering it to the local colleges and universities in the area, because it really is a barrier for a lot of folks. The first time you see a job announcement on USA Jobs, it's long. There's all of these different sections on there. And it can be really challenging to figure out how okay, what is the job? How do I qualify for it? Do I qualify for it? So I hear that, and I'm glad that me and my team are moving in a direction that is helpful. I wanted to ask a question about telework, because I know that in the presentation they talked about how access to public transportation and some help in terms of either having a stipend for public transit, or when it comes to offering internships, please make sure that they are paid internships so that we're not creating kind of this inequitable process. But when it comes to telework, in your study, did you find that was an important aspect to highlight for potential candidates? Like, is that important? I can imagine that it's important, but did students or folks just entering the job market, do they know about telework, or the difference between telework versus just having like a virtual position and things like that?
Right. I think you're highlighting something that did come across that Daniel spoke to, was the inflexible workplace. And that's where that notion was highlighted, right? And that it's a very 9-to-5 bureaucracy. You have a process to report to your, supervisor, and you have direct reports when you get higher up. And so there's this really rigidity, when there might be an attractiveness about telecommuting. So you still have, or telework, so you still have a community and a workspace and a work environment, a work team. And yet you have some flexibility of your work hours and your work schedule and your work location. So if, to the extent that there are flexible work environments that your agency can offer, I think that is a good thing to highlight for these new job seekers, particularly those from diverse backgrounds.
And I think we are seeing indications that the COVID-19 pandemic has made agencies more accepting of telework and other kinds of remote arrangements, because obviously all organizations have been forced to adapt. And I think we're seeing at least an indication that this might permanently increase leadership's attitude toward, or make leadership more open to flexible arrangements, maybe not only just along the dimension of telework, but potentially opening up their perspective to different ways of working. I think it's a little early to say whether that's trend is going to stick, but I've heard that a lot from my colleagues in the private sector, that companies that used to insist on very high in-person presence are dramatically rethinking that, and some smaller companies even giving up large physical offices that they were renting because they've realized that they can work effectively in a heavily remote model, albeit with selected in-person experiences, which we also know are quite valuable for building community and relationships, but maybe doesn't have to be 40 hours a week in the cubicle. I think we have at least one. Caroline Steele, I see your hand up.
Yes, hello, can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, hi, I'm actually coming all the way from Lawrence, Kansas. I'm a university student at KU, and I work with the city of Olathe, which is a small town, medium-sized town in the state of Kansas. And I'm actually a fully virtual intern. So I just kind of wanted to speak to that as a fully virtual intern in the public sector. And it is the only reason I'm able to have an internship while being a full-time college student. And the way that my supervisor, who is the city manager of Olathe, Susan Sherman, or the assistant city manager, the way that we decided to do this was kind of do an in-person orientation over this past winter break. So in 2020, and then send me off to school while having some in-person connection, and then work completely virtually. And then over the summer, I worked in person again while I was home, and then went back to virtual while back to full-time studies at school. And so that's been a very flexible way to make that work. And also, just as a young person listening to this, I can vouch that everything that you all mentioned is totally true when we're talking about barriers that young people are seeing when trying to seek work in the public force. And so I just was really happy to see that you all are doing a presentation like this and kind of shedding light on these things. I also had a question, if that's okay. I was curious about your, like, if you had any studies or understanding of how social media outreach for young people is, if it's effective or not, because the city of Olathe is kind of starting a revamp of our social media and our website, hoping that that might attract some young candidates. And I was just curious about your input on whether that tends to be successful or not.
Crickets.
To bring to you, all if that came up.
Yeah, we talked about where do you get your information. And so yes, that's part of it, anywhere and everywhere. I mean, they went from telling us about Indeed and Handshake is like the newest thing. But that it really, that wasn't the strong motivator into having someone apply. What was the strong motivator, I would say, of the facilitator, if you will, of having someone apply is sort of that warm handoff of saying, like, here's the job. You talk to someone more virtually or a recruiter, on these job fairs, and really having an understanding of the career process. So while I think it's important to highlight job opportunities for that exposure on social media where people are actually accessing their news and their information, it's I not from our findings, but I would speculate that it's not going to be a high return on investment by putting ads on Instagram and TikTok.
Thanks very much. Thanks for coming to the webinar. Great to have somebody from our ultimate audience in the call. I see Craig Seal asked a question in chat. Are there financial aid implications for paid versus unpaid internships, or trying to provide fellowships or scholarships to offset unpaid internships? I am not a big expert or enough of an expert on financial aid to know all the implications of this, but I certainly would expect that internship wages would be counted as employment income, just as any other employment. And I think our perspective is that the students that are being targeted by these internships are likely to work. So I don't think the issue is that a student was going to do something for no pay and now is going to do something for pay and their income is changing. I think the issue is more commonly, the student is going to work in, say, a service industry job that has no connection to their degree, working in a restaurant or in hospitality or something like that, while they could be working in a career enhancing position, maybe for the same wages. So that's kind of how I think we're thinking about this. And I certainly do recognize that there could be reasons why unpaid work experience is appropriate in an academic program, but I would argue that it's more appropriate when the overwhelming purpose is for a student to learn something. So that's essentially the equivalent of taking a class, but learning it through a practical experience. That could make sense as an unpaid experience because it's primarily about learning. Whereas what we've seen is that a lot of the internships that we looked at, particularly at the local government level, were much more like junior professional positions, just where the students were volunteering their time. I think we've had a couple of more a couple of more comments. Diane and Sandy both mentioned about USA Jobs and how it's supposed to level the playing field. I see P.W. May has raised his or her hand.
Good afternoon, Charles. This is Paul Mayberry. Thank you for you and your team. This is a great presentation on a critical topic for developing and diversifying the public workforce. Question I have is, did you guys think about or propose designing any experimentation really to test programmatic responses to overcoming the barriers that you raised, or even to identify plans to evaluate, continually monitor efforts to deal with such barriers? And secondly, how do you think your results really generalize from Southern California to the rest of the world?
Good questions.
Do you want to take one of those to bring?
No, I think you should start because I know you have the first one down.
All right. Well, you know us, Paul, and for full disclosure, Paul is a RAND colleague. And so we at RAND are very much interested in systematic evaluation of new policies. I know that our team would be very eager to embark on some kind of rigorous evaluation of some of these ideas. On the other hand, that is complicated to do because this is a complex ecosystem with a lot of interacting actors and issues. And so it's not as easy as I find it in some other areas of my work to think about a clean experiment. But I appreciate the prompt to do that, and we definitely will be thinking about that. To bring, you want to speak about how generalized?
The general, while we focused on students and agencies that were in the LA SCAG area, these are generalizable. So we also incorporated the literature search into it, and those were findings from all across our nation. So to the extent that agencies, in Pennsylvania or Oklahoma are seeking diverse and talented individuals into their public sector careers, these barriers and facilitators seem to exist there as well. So broadly speaking, you could take any of the barriers and facilitators, recognize them in your agency across our nation, and then use some of the strategies that we said might be promising to address them.
Thank
you very much.
Thank you, Paul. All right, I see Carrie Ann has raised her hand.
Yes. Hi, Charles. I wanted to circle back a little bit and support your answer to the question about financial aid implications for internships. I am the Master of Public Administration Program Manager at the University of Kansas, Kansas's program. So what I would like to say is that financial aid implications aren't necessarily tied so much to estimated family contribution when it comes to FAFSA reporting anymore, but it is tied very specifically to enrollment amount. So that would be something to be keeping in mind as you are interviewing and communicating with applicants if you have a paid internship that they are coming into your organization with. Also, just in general, having paid internships on the table just allows your students who are interested in getting involved in public sector organizations a little bit more personal accountability and organizational buy-in that tends to be missing a little bit when it's an unpaid internship and there isn't necessarily that sort of financial tie into the organization and its mission. But as far as financial aid implications for a lot of states, I don't know if it's necessarily the case for California, but some states do have career work study programs where organizations can sign in with the university and be matched with students who are also interested in that particular sector to be paid both through the state and through the organization, which relieves a little bit of organizational cost for supporting these internships and providing these opportunities for students.
Thanks very much. Those are really helpful observations. And I certainly had not heard of that career work study with matching funds before, so I'd like to learn more about that.
I will drop a link to the information on the University of Kansas website in the chat about that program, just so everyone has access to it to read a little bit more about it.
Terrific. Thank you very much.
This is Catherine, and we had a virtual student federal service unpaid intern last year from Maryland. And in Maryland, she was getting some sort of stipend for the hours that she spent doing her unpaid program with us at the Federal Executive Board. And so a lot of states do offer that, and it is a great equalizer for low-income families of any race.
Oh, that's terrific. Thank you, Catherine. And Catherine, I know that you, as the chair of the Federal Executive Board in Los Angeles, have a lot of investment in these issues. So I'm just wondering if you wanted to add anything else to what we've been talking about today.
Oh, I think your report is great. Crystal Murray's been the main contact with this particular working group, and she's been representing us well. And I'm excited to share the report and the career profiles. And our own Diane Vu is our federal rock star that I'm seeing on the screen at the moment. And no, it's this G2U Alliance has been awesome. And but definitely the unpaid internship is something I feel very strongly about. I personally had to turn down an internship at the National Academy of Public Administration because it was unpaid many years ago. And I've always felt sorry for students who were put in that position. So anything we can do to shine a light on that issue. And if there's state resources, definitely help students become aware of those. I think a lot of those are based at the community college level, at least in California. That's been my experience.
Great. Thank you, Catherine. Thanks for all your support. I see Crystal is in the room. Crystal, Crystal was the first person to approach us with the idea about filming these career stories videos. So I hope you are pleased with the products that we've been able to produce. And if you want to join the conversation and make any comments, please feel free.
Thank you. I'm glad we did get to do some videos. Unfortunately, we had some we couldn't do, but I'm pleased. I haven't looked at them yet, but I look forward to looking at them and being able to share those through our FEB channel with interns, people looking for employment, so that they can see how great it is to be a public servant and to work for the federal government for me. So I wish I could have been a part of the videos, but maybe next time. Because I do believe this is a tool that can be continuously updated with other voices from different career fields that people can hear about through this vehicle. And it'll be a great resource for a college resource for them to show students that may have not heard of all the different government agencies in their area and to help recruit.
Great,
Yeah,
thank you, Crystal.
Going back up to our very first question, one of the most important challenges is that career exposure. So I'm just really delighted that the videos came out so well, and it's really a first opportunity to have that career exposure, which is so important.
This is Catherine again. I just put in the chat the links to the 7 career exploration panels that Dr. Norman and I put on this last year. Although they're about an hour and a half in length, there's little snippets of very representative panelists from all levels of government that you could even extract just a portion to show to students or to potential applicants. And they are on our FEB YouTube channel. So enjoy them. They're great.
Thanks, Catherine. Those are a terrific resource, and we also want to publicize those. So that's great that we've provided the links. Camille, did you want to have a comment?
Hi, yeah. So after Catherine posted that in the chat, I was thinking, whoa, this is a great opportunity if you will allow me to share that through EPA. We're actually doing these targeted recruitment efforts aimed toward HBCUs, HSIs, communities, and they're all in January and February. So if I have permission, can I share
Yes,
the link?
by all means, please put information in the chat, and we'll encourage people to access that.
Awesome. And also, I'm not too sure if there are other federal agencies on the line who work in the areas of recruitment and outreach like myself. But if you would like to collaborate, because I know that with us in EPA Region 9, we're always looking to collaborate with our federal partners. I'll also put my email in the chat, or if you have any questions, you guys are, feel free to reach out.
Great. So please put that into the chat, Camille, so everybody will have a chance to copy that down and access it.
So one of the things I really enjoyed about the career exploration panels featuring federal, state, and local is we might have got a student to attend the session because they were interested in state or local. And then it's like, oh, surprise, there's federal jobs in this area too. So I think that's a great feature of G2U. And it's sort of, because I've always been very federal centric. And so it's been, I think, really interesting to represent all levels of government. So just Camille, I would just urge you, when you think about your partnerships, think beyond just federal, because I do think that has a value, because students might not show up for a federal panel, but they might show up for an environmental sciences panel, and you can sneak a state or local person on your panel and might get better traction.
Great. Well, thank you, everybody. We've reached just about the top of the hour, and on behalf of the study team and our partners at the Volker Alliance and the SOCALG2U, I want to thank everybody for participating in the webinar today. This webinar has been recorded and it will be posted on the SOCALG2U website, so you can share it with friends and colleagues. I'm going to draw the meeting to a close, but because people are posting links in the chat, we'll try to leave the meeting open for a couple of minutes, just so everybody can get their last links into the chat and you have a chance to copy them down. So with that, thank you very much.